I give the floor to Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Pakistan aligns itself with the statement made by the permanent representative of Italy on behalf of the Uniting for Consensus. We appreciate the very eloquent introduction of the CARICOM model by the distinguished permanent representative of Guyana. We receive every proposal with full respect and due consideration and seek to engage constructively in this discussion. And I appreciate the exchange of views with the permanent representative of Guyana on behalf of CARICOM that has enabled us to understand better the CARICOM model. I would like to make a few points in my national capacity. One, Pakistan opposes the creation of new individual permanent seats as it is contrary to the universally agreed principles of democracy, accountability, and transparency. Above all, it runs counter to the principle of sovereign equality of all member states as enshrined in Article 2.1 of the Charter. Together with Guyana and other elected members, and in fact, with the rest of the general membership, we know how the Council is often hampered by the positions of the permanent members who are not accountable to the wider membership. The UFC therefore remains staunchly opposed to proposals for permanent seats, as there is no justification for creating new centers of privilege within the UN. And to the contrary, our goal is to democratize the Council through reform that promotes the interests and aspirations of all UN member states, small, medium-sized, and large, and not just a few. Therefore, as the UFC has proposed, additional elected members will enhance regional representation and ownership, imparting more legitimacy to the Council. And let me also note that in our view, the common African position, which is on behalf of and for Africa, and enjoying consensus and approval of the heads of state and government, is fundamentally different from the individual pursuit of some countries in other regions. Secondly, the model that has been presented is somewhat vague in the sense that it does not indicate the proposed size of an expanded Security Council, including the number of elected non-permanent seats. It only says a number between the mid to upper 20s, which makes it challenging to visualize the broader representation. On the contrary, the UFC's proposal to add 12 new non-permanent seats would offer greater representation to most small and medium states and ensure equitable geopolitical representation. Furthermore, a larger number of non-permanent members could balance the inordinate influence of the 5 permanent members. Thirdly, the geographical distribution of the seats has to be equitable. For example, Europe and North America are already overrepresented on the Security Council, with 3 permanent members, 2 non-permanent members from Western Europe, and 1 from Eastern Europe. Under the circumstances, there should actually be no additional seats for Western Europe. However, in view of the keen interest of the members of WIOG for more opportunities to serve on the Council, we have envisaged in the UFC model 1 new seat in the non-permanent category that will be available for all members of that group on the basis of rotation and periodic elections. We are of the view that the representation of the developing countries must be bolstered to correct the historic injustices against Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We believe that such requirements of equitable representation can be best achieved, including through regional and cross-regional representation of the African, Arab, and OIC groups. Fourthly, on the issue of the veto, the language is contradictory in this proposal. It starts with the wording that veto should be abolished, but then goes on to say that in case it is retained, new permanent members should also have the same prerogative. In our view, to make the Council more effective, it is important to either abolish the veto rights of permanent members or, failing this, to restrict its use as much as possible. We have already explained our position on veto in the second IGN meeting. In our view, it defies logic to argue that the special privilege such as veto, which is actually at the core of the problems confronting the Security Council, and then to suggest a proposal that will further aggravate that problem. Fifth, we appreciate the attempt in the CARICOM model to accommodate the representation of the cross-regional groups. The proposal mentions the SIDS, but does not encompass, at the moment, the Arab and OIC groups, on which there is also convergence as reflected in the Common Elements paper of the co-chairs. The OIC is the second largest organization after the UN. Some of the OIC members are covered within the African and Arab groups, but others are not covered within either of these groups. Therefore, the interests of the OIC and all of its members must be represented in the expanded Security Council. Sixth, we welcome most of the proposals for improving the working methods of the Council and ones outlined under the relationship between the Security Council and the General Assembly. Mr. Chair, we also note that the CARICOM model also refers to the criteria for membership as outlined in Article 23(1) of the Charter, which basically relates to election of non-permanent members. It is obvious that any candidatures would be rigorously evaluated vis-à-vis these requirements, including contribution to maintenance of international peace and security and to other purposes of the organization. This would merit particular attention to member states who have a consistent track record of violating UN Security Council resolutions and violating the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, including committing military aggression against other member states. Finally, Mr. Chair, on the process, we are of the view that the objective remains a comprehensive reform. Attempts for a quick fix did not work in the past and are even more unlikely to work now. Reform will be delivered based on an agreement among member states on the substance and not procedural maneuvers. The IGN process is a membership-driven process that is to be pursued in good faith with mutual respect and genuine commitment, as the distinguished permanent representative of Guyana also noted, in an open, inclusive, and transparent manner, with the objective of seeking a solution that enjoys the widest possible political acceptance of the membership. Current discussions and state of play in the IGN do not indicate that we have reached a point where text-based negotiations will produce such an agreed upon outcome. We believe that the UFC proposal provides the most flexible, realistic, and pragmatic way to make the Security Council more representative of and accountable to the general membership of the UN. Mr. Chair, we thank CARICOM for their important proposal and contribution, and we encourage other groups and member states to also present their respective models. We remain ready and willing, Mr. Chair, to continue our productive discussions under your able leadership. I thank you.
I